Hello, everybody. Welcome to Bill and Ammon's Bogus Hangout. Have our guests introduce themselves. Let's start with Zara. Zara, would you please tell us something about yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Zara Altier, and I do content writing for the web for small businesses.
Steve, would you please introduce yourself?
Steve Grinter with Deep SEO Con, and today we just released our latest webinar with Kim Crossberg in talking about website accessibility. You can find us on YouTube and Facebook.
It sounds like it should be fun.
Yes, Kim is awesome.
She is, definitely. Thomas, please introduce yourself.
Thomas Sickle, founder of Blueprint Marketing, and I sit on the board of a couple companies. And I'm here to talk about search engine optimization.
And I'm Bill Slosky of SEO by the Sea, and I'm the director of SEO research for Go Fish Digital. And I wrote a blog post this morning called "What are LSI keywords and what I use instead of them?" which is an important thing because there's no just magical things that you can use that help you optimize web pages for search. But there are some things that Google has written patents about that tell you what you can add to get pages to rank better. And we have another guest. Hey, Doc, would you please introduce yourself for our guests?
Doc Sheldon of Intrinsic Value SEO and Deep SEO Conference.
So, a question to all of you. What's your favorite SEO myth, if you can have a favorite?
SEO is dead.
Yeah, that's a top runner for sure. I go with keyword density, I guess.
Keyword density, yep.
I think mine's more of a holistic thing, that there's any one thing you can do to your website to make it rank.
Bingo.
Mine is that you can reach a point where SEO is done and you can't do any more to a website.
Always room for improvement.
Now, I worked for an agency once, and the guy who we were doing SEO for told me, your bosses told me that my site couldn't have any more SEO done in it. And I said, I just spent 45 minutes going through your site, starting to list the things I wanted to do. And it isn't finished by far.
Yeah.
Especially if you work with the business owners or the people that run the business and you understand what their objectives are, you can really start to, make a lot of strides no matter what it is.
Yeah. If they're not getting the kind of traffic they're expecting, there's probably something wrong.
Yeah, over-optimization is a very rare, it's kind of a myth as well.
Well, I was concerned about the under-optimization.
Yeah, be more concerned about that than over-optimization.
And my bosses who were telling them SEO was done on the website were completely wrong. There's a reason why they weren't doing SEO anymore.
What was the reason at the time?
They weren't very good at it.
They couldn't think of the next great thing to do with the website to make it...
and or lazy.
They kept on getting promoted beyond their capabilities.
Mm.
Yeah, what they should have said is there's nothing more we can do with your site.
Yeah, because we're too stupid. We don't understand what we're doing.
Yeah.
Sadly, these days, the people writing articles about the benefits of LSI keywords and so on really have no clue. And people buying those up, flocking to them, writing stuff like first or great post or something like that.
LSI tools, people that sell tools that actually use
Well,
LSI.
You know what I think happens is when I first decided to start getting into SEO copywriting and I had to learn what the heck SEO was, my approach was I started looking around on the forums and on the blogs and on the publications, seeing who were the most prevalent people You know, in those days it was Aaron and Bruce and Rand and these folks that were publishing a lot of stuff, and I figured those must be the people to follow because they've got a big following and they're prolific writers. And it didn't take me too long to realize that I was chasing a wild goose. That some of those people that had all that time to write didn't have the time to learn what the hell they were writing about.
Yeah.
Well, I've read 4 or 5 different articles now in the last week where people are predicting what the big things are going to be for next year.
Yeah.
And on everybody's list is AI content writing for SEO.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, this is just article spinning, right?
Yeah.
We aren't to the point where AI can write real good content at the level you guys are selling it for.
It can summarize content pretty well.
Yeah. The
But
problem
There are large language models that do pre-training of content, and they do a pretty good job of doing things like identifying parts of speech and entities and so on.
Right. Well, and one of the things that I see a lot, though, is a lot of these guys that are pushing the AI content for SEO aren't writing content for people. They're writing content for silos, for linking, and it's all, I mean, it's not good. It's not terrible.
How different is it from what Phantom Master was putting out 10 years ago or 15 years ago?
Well, the difference is he was doing it 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, these guys are 10 years late to the party and think they've got something cool. And it's not. It's just crap. It's just a different way of generating the crap. I would rather pay someone, you know, $20 or $10 an article who has English as a second or third language than an AI written article, because I have yet to see one written well enough that people reading it would get something from it.
Well, both of those examples, Steve, are going to necessarily need the same amount of editing effort to make it readable. And then you're still limited. You know, the knowledge that an AI writer is going to provide is no greater than what it was using as its source.
Right.
So there's no real research there. There's basically it's scraping it and rearranging it.
It's scraping it and rearranging it. The other thing I found with AI writing so far, anyway, is that AI can write a beautiful sentence with all the appropriate words, but the sentence has absolutely no meaning whatsoever. If you try to parse it for meaning, there isn't any there. It's just got the words and the sentence or the word order and subject and a verb and a, you know.
Yeah, the sentence structure is grammatically correct, but it doesn't say anything.
Exactly.
And I've written articles by human beings that were professing themselves to be experts. One of them was about criminal justice. And the guy wrote a perfect article up until the very end, where he talked about how criminals were being treated harshly in jail. And he should have said they were being harshly treated in prison.
Yeah.
Jail is where you go as a holding cell before you're sentenced. Prison's where you go after you're sentenced. He didn't understand that. It's something that anybody who has ever worked in the criminal justice system understands after a week or two.
Yeah. You're likely to get out of jail soon. You're unlikely to get out of prison soon.
Yeah.
One way to define it.
But yeah, I mean, we've had those kinds of issues all along, though. I mean, I freely admit I used to be a fairly aggressive black hat back in the day, and we used to spin the crap out of content, and we're good at it. I mean, to do it well takes effort, and to do it well enough so that not only could you spin the content, but spin the content so it made sense. You know, it would. Looking back on it, it might have just been easier to pay for good content, but you know, we couldn't do the volume that way that we were able to do with tools.
Well, and to your earlier point, Steve, it's the sort of thing that back in those days, that one thing could have a major impact on the performance of a site. Not anymore.
Right. I mean, to lay it out the way we used to, and I still see people doing this and coming into the groups. I keep calling them forums because I'm old, but they come into the Facebook groups with this new idea of stacking content with a little article linking to a better article, linking to a better article, and they lay it all out in this big. Now they call them silos, but we used to call them pyramids. And it's like it's something new to them, and it's like, no, we were doing that 15 years ago when it worked.
If someone calls it a silo, it's like something Bruce Clay came up with 15 years ago.
Yeah.
At least 15.
Yeah.
And it's like, you just go, no, this is not new. You haven't discovered some secret. What you've discovered is how things work. Well, I mean, you can't do it easily like you used to be able to, because back in the old days, we used to have, article directories and, hundreds, if not thousands of them, where you could spin the same piece of content 20 different ways and blast it to 500 article directories and do it in an afternoon and have it actually move the needle.
Yeah.
You can't do that anymore. Google has evolved and understands that's why you don't see article directories anymore. They're hard to maintain. They're a pain in the butt. And you have to worry about spammers like me.
And they don't provide value.
No, there's no value in them.
And the sites like DMOZ and their clones have all gone away.
Yeah.
I wanted to be an editor so badly. Just slipped through my fingers.
Yeah. I had more fun arguing with people who were editors and just paying people to host stuff for us because it was easier than trying to become an editor. Well, you said anything bad about DMOZ, boy, were they all over you quick.
Oh, yeah.
Like, tell us who these paid editors are. So, well, no. I'm not going to tell you who I paid for my listing. I like my listings, and I want to continue to pay this person to drop stuff for me. But even, and it's like Wikipedia is now. It's become this walled-off garden that if you're not part of the select group, you don't get to edit. And everything you do edit, regardless of who you are and what you know, is going to get reversed by somebody else who demands a third-party source. It's like, but I'm the person you're talking about, and I wrote the thing you're talking about. We still need a third-party source, but no.
It's one of my favorite stories about Wikipedia. The guy, Jaron Lanier, who invented some of RR Vision.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Somebody published a biography of Jaron Lanier, which he hated because it was wrong. He had done a video on YouTube once, like 10 years ago. There was an experimental video. Yep. So they wrote the biography calling him an experimental music maker.
Yep.
And he responded to them, I've taught at MIT. I've invented this and this and this. One of the last things I am is an experimental music maker, having made one video once, many years ago, 5 minutes long. I want to edit my article. You people refuse to let me edit my article.
Yeah.
Even though it's completely wrong.
Nope.
And their response was, no, we can't let you edit it. There'd be a conflict of interest because it's about you. And his response was, it's about me, but I know me better than most of you.
It's those people that will not be forthright about who they are. I think that they're trying to prevent. But
well, yeah, they're probably concerned about setting a precedent. They just took a hardline rule and said we're never going to allow first party editing, and I can understand the thought process behind that. But when what are you going to do? You're going to come out and you're going to say that Richard Nixon comes to you about his page and says, yeah, I was a water boy in college, but I have other things in my history,
Yeah. His first sentence isn't necessarily going to be, I'm not a crook. Well, maybe it is.
Gotta shake your cheeks while you say that.
Yeah, there's some people I wouldn't let edit their own biography.
Oh, yeah.
Neil Patel.
Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people
That's
sadly.
a good one.
But any of those people could have someone else create it. That's the funny part, the ridiculous part about it is, anyone other than them hypothetically could do it, right? So
Yeah.
it's not like it's a real thing to worry about.
I've been supposedly an editor at Wikipedia for about pushing 20 years now. And I actually went into an article about 3-4 years ago, and there were some grammatical errors and typographical errors in it. And I edited them to make it more readable. Didn't change the meaning a bit, didn't add anything to it, I simply corrected the errors. Mm-hmm. And one of the entrenched editors reversed it. And I got back in there talking to him, and did you look at this? Look at the fourth line down in the second paragraph. Read that. It's not. We'll handle it.
For fun.
We'll handle it. That's okay. So this is not a community edited body. No. This is a click edited body, which apparently pissed him off.
Yeah, there.
Somebody off.
It's rare that Doc offends people that way.
I've been hanging around you long, Steve. That's all. Rubbed off on me.
Yeah, Wikipedia is one of those things where it's really annoying. You do a lot of work on it, and then you see some editor come in and you're like, what the hell? Why did you change this? And their answers are, come join this editor chat, and we'll tell you about it next Thursday. And it's like, oh.
This is my turf, and you will not edit anything that I am responsible for without my permission. Is generally the answer.
Pretty much.
And that's sad.
There are zoologist terms about that type of stuff. Like territorial pissing.
Yeah.
Well, pissing on a fence? Yeah.
Pissing contest it's a nightmare.
Just wash the whole place down with testosterone, and I get it. I understand the mentality behind it.
Yeah, I've been to forums like that too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's like you're the new person in the forum, so you can't be right by any means.
Yeah.
Because you're not the alpha male.
Yeah. I remember, oh good Lord, this must have been 15, almost 20 years ago. I don't remember all the details of it, but Google was making some changes about, I don't remember what it was now, but what they were changing was a fundamental change in the way a character was being used in programming languages. And it's like, they're like, well, you don't understand. This is who this person is at Google, and what they say matters. And I'm like, but this is the way this has been used since this language was invented. They can't just come in and say, as effective now, we want to change it because we want to. And
how many millions of existing sites are out there using it the old way, and all of a sudden they're going to render that useless?
Yeah. And I think it had something to do with underscores and hyphens, but anyway, I mean, it was just ridiculous, the amount of fighting that was going on involved because of it. And it's the same thing like when we discovered negative SEO and spent 2 years trying to convince people that it was possible. before Google finally said, well, yeah, maybe. But during that 2 years, we were using people who said it wasn't possible as examples and showing them that it was. So what's your website? And and bounce them out of the index. It's like, see, it is possible. It wasn't easy. It's still not easy, but it's possible.
It's never easy if it actually can, if it was easy, everyone would do it. So,
Yeah. There are a lot of pre-existing conditions that need to be in place before it works.
exactly.
But boy, when it works. What else did we have on? Doc could tell you everybody about the Deep SEO conference. Dropping a plug.
Sure,
What's
throw me
going
in
on with
there,
the
Brian.
Deep
Throw me
SEO
in the
conference?
damn under the bus. Say what, Bill?
What's going on with the Deep SEO conference?
Well, we are scurrying rapidly, coming up with the majority already of our speaker lineup. Some outstanding speakers, and we're doing something radically different from what almost all conferences have been doing.
Providing value.
Well, that too.
T-shirt guns.
Yeah, everybody gets a 38 special at the door.
And ammunition?
You got to bring your own ammo.
Okay.
No, we're trying to do something a cut above the norm, and a big part of that is having some outstanding speakers. And both of us are pretty chuffed because everybody we've talked to the last week and a half, 2 weeks, that are on our A list has signed on. So
Yeah.
it's really been amazing. Kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop,
Yeah, that'll be something to do. To give a little more information, we're going to be having the conference at the end of August 2022 in Ensenada, Mexico. And you can go to the website and learn more if you want. But we're excited about the speaker list. It's got some real great people in it, and hopefully it'll be something a little unique.
Are people going to be traveling then?
Well, a bunch of them, yeah. I mean, I'm traveling. I'm kind of over the whole COVID thing, and I'm traveling. I'm done. I have all 3 of my shots. I wear masks where appropriate.
Hopefully, we'll have 4 by then.
Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah.
And we are going to be doing a hybrid event. We do have a couple of speakers who will not be traveling regardless, and we're cool with that. So they will be appearing live via remote, and we'll probably add a virtual component for other people who don't want to travel to see the conference.
And you bring your own fishing pole, or you guys supply them?
There
All
will be
supplied.
fishing and wine tours, and yeah, all the food's paid for, all the hotel rooms are paid for. It'll be a pretty awesome deal. At least that's the plan. What else was on? There was something else I read recently. Sorry, I'm drawing a bit of a blank.
I just sent something over for Bill to take a peek at. I think he'll get a kick out. Everyone will get a kick out of. This is the tool. It's an LSI keyword tool.
Hmm.
It says it's based on.
Yeah, be sure and bookmark that, Bill. You never know when it might come in handy.
Make sure and bookmark what.
The LSI keyword.
LSI keyword generator.
It's if you look at the short URL above, it's a picture, and I have a little plugin where it says they took the content from to create that page. So somewhere on that page, there's it says maybe based on content from, and it's your post about latent semantic indexing.
What are you reading? I'm sorry.
It's the keyword tool that I sent, and it's basically saying that there's a primary. This page may be based on content from, and then it has SEO by the sea, Quora, and make use of. And because if you scroll down at the bottom, you'll see there's a lot of content they probably just copy and pasted from your site.
Where are you getting that from? Where are you reading it?
Here's like the you see like the see the screenshot. I've got to figure out the name of the it's just a it's an extension in Chrome which allows you to then it compares the content to where you got it. So it's not saying that it's saying that they stole content from you basically.
Who stole content from me? The keyword planner?
Yes, exactly.
I don't think either is stole content from each other.
No, they're just simply saying that they based it on some
They
content
based it
from
on
the
it, and
internet.
since you're a known name, it sounds like it's.
Yeah, this page may be based on content from, and then it just does comparative content. So like they took all the best parts and left out all the true parts, or made it sound a little bit. So basically,
But
because
they're
you wrote,
lying, is what it is.
yeah, exactly.
I suppose me going to the clickbaiters websites and stealing content from them,
Exactly. Yeah.
addressing their lies.
You could DMCA them, but yeah, it looks like they've basically just taken. They've taken what you've condensed from the patent research, and they have. It's pretty sad what they've done.
And they cherry picked it.
Yep, exactly.
How myths are promulgated.
What are LSI keywords, and then it's probably exactly the same as. Let me see if I can. Yeah, so they've taken from you and a couple of other sources, but they've just changed it to make it sound a little bit more like it's a positive thing instead of a negative thing.
My dog is voice actuated. Whenever she hears me talking to somebody, that's when she barks and wants to go out.
My mother has a dog like that. If she's on the phone, she is barking constantly.
You're ignoring me.
What are some search tools that everyone does use?
What are some search tools?
Yeah, that you guys do use, like for
Screaming Frog?
Screaming Frogs.
Sitebulb.
Sitebulb, yeah.
Sitebulb's great.
SEMrush, but I turn it on and off as needed because it's a little expensive for most of my clients.
SEMrush is great. Anyone use OnCrawl or Autofy or DeepCrawl?
The only time I've ever used DeepCrawl was when I had a really large site to do.
Yeah.
When DeepCrawl first came out, and they weren't publishing the prices on the website, I contacted them and contracted to use it, but it was too expensive to use on a regular basis.
Yeah. Pretty pricey.
They reduced the price significantly since then,
They have, yeah.
but it's still kind of steep.
Yep. For large sites, if you, like before Screaming Frog really got good at putting things on an SSD drive, I used it for almost everything, but I still use DeepQuell for a lot of things. But yeah, like Screaming Frog can do quite a bit as well, and both of them put out about the same amount of information.
To run Screaming Frog from the cloud, you can cover big sites.
Yeah, I was trying to create that once. I was trying to put it on to a server I had, and I don't know. I didn't take enough time to do it, I guess. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense to. Definitely does make a lot of sense to use it.
I got a funny one for you, Billy.
Yeah, what's
Talk
that?
about keyword research. This is a guy in a Facebook post a couple 3 weeks ago, I guess, was saying how he did. Somebody asked about how, what tools they use for their keyword research. He said, I just use Google. And which Google? What do you mean? And, well, I just do a search for the word, and I'll search half a dozen keywords and see which one shows the greatest volume at the top of the SERP, and that's the one I'll focus on. What?
Sorry about that.
This one's got 1.3 million, and this one's got 2.1 million. I'm going to go with the one that's got 2.1 million. Okay, and how long have you been doing this? How's that working out for you?
Wow.
He
So
got very
those are,
defensive
those
about
are
it.
potential competitors of yours.
He got very, very upset and defensive.
Now, to be fair, I do use Broadmatch, PPC,
Yeah.
to do some keyword discovery.
Yeah.
It comes in real handy. It's a shortcut for what actually works for that specific website, which is nice. Yeah, it just, you look at some of these keyword tools these days, and it's like, there is absolutely no way a converting customer is going to type that in.
Yeah.
Right.
Somebody may be searching, and that's where that whole intent side of things comes in. People look at keywords and volume and difficulty rating, and that's fine, but you also need to start looking at intent. Is that a keyword that people will type in with the intent of buying, or with the intent of learning more, or basic research, or what's the reasoning behind that particular phrase? Just because you rank for it doesn't mean squat.
No, well, that's the same whole everything in keywords. Just because you rank for it doesn't mean anything.
Our philosophy concerning keywords were to try to find and identify the terms that audience members would
Correct.
search for and would expect to see on your pages.
Yeah.
And if you can't
Somebody was
identify
asking-
those, you're doing it wrong.
Somebody was asking for a tool that would let them help them track the rankings of over 200,000 keywords that their customer's website ranked for, because the customer wanted that information. And it's like, oh my God, no, please no. You need to do you need yourself a new client, or to have a long conversation with the client, because that is ridiculous.
Bring your own 2x4.
Yeah.
If you do need a tool to do something like that, Stat's pretty good, but it has to be an enterprise site if you're doing that many keywords.
Well, apparently they typed into SpyFu their URL, and SpyFu came back and said, this website ranks for over 200,000 words. It's like, yeah, but some of those words are going to be like the.
Yeah, gibberish.
You know, we just don't care. I want to pay attention to the phrases that convert.
Right. I
Whether
remember optimizingscience.org, and it
Mhm.
ranked 14th for Blue Arrow because it had a alt image of an arrow.
and it was blue.
It was blue.
Yeah,
It,
right.
that was
That's
on the
funny.
homepage. It was page rank 9. It was ranking 14th in the world for Blue Arrow.
it's like
It
my
had
buddy.
nothing to do with blue arrows.
I had a buddy of mine who had a jewelry site that ranked #1 for how big is a millimeter, and it drove 80% of the traffic to his website, and not one of those people ever converted because they weren't looking for jewelry. They were looking to see how big's a millimeter, and he had a great page that broke it down into terms people could understand, and people would come in and go, "Oh, that's how big a millimeter is," and leave. And finally, I convinced him to no index that page because he was paying an awful lot for hosting because of the amount of, the volume, the sheer volume of
The
traffic that
volume,
one
yeah.
was getting.
It's like the company that made a similar product to what I made originally, cardboard tubes called YouTube. It was Y. It was a letter U in tube, and when YouTube came out, it took up a lot of their traffic, and they sued Google. They sued YouTube. It was his own company at the time. Sorry.
Yeah.
So when they sued, they actually won, believe it or not, and then they kept it. They kept the domain just because now it's United Tube, and but they kept the domain to put ads on there. Kind of a smart move on their behalf, especially to win against.
About all that was left to them.
Yeah, I don't know how much traffic they get today, but
Like back in the old day, where before search engines, where people would just start typing in domain names, trying to figure out what they were looking for.
Yep.
yeah, exactly. Before the search bar or the URL bar became a search bar as well.
Well, I mean, the guy that owns sex.com made millions of dollars just selling banner ads.
Remember SEO.com was a sewing site?
Mhm.
It was sewing electrical something. That actually ranked sadly for a long period of time. So what do you think is the value of an exact match domain?
Slightly more than one that doesn't have an exact match.
2%, 3%?
Not even that.
Yeah.
It made a difference when linking was more prevalent because you could stuff your links with keywords, which helped that way. Even if you didn't have anchor text on a bare link,
Yeah,
was
the
still
keyword
keyword.
was still.
But as far as an actual ranking factor anymore, it's I wouldn't. I would. Now, if we're talking local search, that's a whole nother animal. Local search, it plays a role. We've seen that more often than not, and usually it plays a role when you add the city name to it more than what you do. Electricians in Nashville. Nashville electrician almost always does better in local search, map packs, and stuff like that than just electricians. So
Makes sense.
So that's somewhere where it plays a role. But for national or international type brand, nah, not so much.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I still like them. They're easy to remember. They're easy to tell someone. They're easy to use in TV and radio and print.
You really
I
see
like
them
them
a lot
for
in
all
TV
those
and
reasons. What's that?
I don't see them a lot in TV and radio. Like, I'm trying to think of an actual one that was like had a. I guess what you can have your keyword in there, like appliance direct or something like that has appliance in it. But I'm trying to think of like an exact match. Or actually, no, there are a couple.
Well, first of all, where I live, we only get one radio station. Give you an idea how far out we are. So I listen to a lot of Pandora and streaming services, and with that going in my ear, I hear URLs all the time. And when it's an exact match for a product, it's real easy to remember. But when it's somebody's brand name, or heaven forbid it has a hyphen in it, it's gone. There's no way I'll remember what that was. Sometimes I can't even find it when I search for it, which is really terrible.
Yeah, that's bad if you don't rank for your own name.
So, yeah. But yeah, I mean, people are still using, I mean, I still hear them all the time on radio when I go into town, like I go into Jackson, or we watch the bigger cities around us, TV stations. You still see their URLs plastered on the screen. It's just a matter of, can you remember it? It's like one of the local doctors groups. It's like PCI Med something, and it's like there's absolutely no way anybody's going to remember this URL.
Yep.
Never in a million years. If they had picked something like, Jackson Medical Partners, that sticks.
Yeah. No, you're right. The simpler, the better in some cases. There's one exact match that I know that does very well, Debt.com, and trying to think of a few others. But yeah, like it's like I try to advise people, when they're buying domains today. If you're going to start a site, you can keep the keyword in what you're doing, but don't just don't spend the money on the big domain.
Yeah, for me, it's usually more about if we haven't even gotten as far as picking a domain name, or it's really early and we can change. I'm far more interested in, do they intend to build it as a brand? Is it a brandable name, something that they can use forever, versus does it tell you what they do?
Yeah.
If you can figure out a way to get both, that's awesome. But if I were to have a choice between the two, I would choose something brandable over a keyword.
Yep.
Almost every day of the week. There are exceptions, obviously, but I would prefer to be able to build a brand around it, because it's a lot easier to promote that, to get press releases, to get mentions in the news and stuff like that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Like, how many of you guys have dealt with SEOs that don't understand hreflang?
That don't understand what?
hreflang.
How many dozens?
It seems like one of the topics that confuses people the most. It's bizarre to me, but I don't know. I love hreflang as a tool, but it's not hard to understand. Well, it has some difficult parts, but it's amazing how many people are actually in search that sadly don't understand it. It's a strange thing to me.
Talking about the
in that case,
domain-
for people who watch this but may not be here right now at the moment, why don't you give it a quick rundown?
A quick what? Rundown? hreflang is a basically a markup created to tell Google or the search or whatever search engine actually is using it, which includes Bing, Yahoo, and I believe DuckDuckGo. I'm not sure on that.
Yandex uses it as well.
Yeah, Yandex, Baidu. Basically, let's say you have a content in English and then you have content in Japanese, and you're trying to target Japan. You would put in the content ID for Japanese when you create the Japanese content, and then the area. So if you were trying to hit Japan, you would put I think it's JP. I could be incorrect. Yeah, and then but if you were trying to do Okinawa, you would do JP for Japanese, and whatever Okinawa's two-letter. Basically, you put the before, in the very beginning, you put the type of text it is, or what language is, and then right after it, the country you want to target, and you'll create a subfolder.
So the point is, search engine will try to show a searcher a page that they're conversing in.
Exactly.
Language. Yeah.
Right.
So that your search engine, your page comes up in whatever language and whatever target you're coming after.
It's like writing stuff for Canadian sites in that area where some people speak English and some people speak French.
Great example. Yep. And there's different ways they spell color, and so you have to make sure that your site is all written correctly by a native speaker. But you also have to make sure the markup is done. And if you do it through the sitemap, it's a little bit more work sometimes, but it's a lot faster. In some cases, depends on the system. But a lot of people I found can expand the audience quite drastically if your business model works that way. That you can do business overseas, or even in the United States if you're going after people that are speaking Spanish.
Well, and Latin America.
What kind of Spanish? There are people who speak Spanish who are Hispanic. There are people who speak Spanish who are Spanish.
Right. There's a name for it. It starts with a C for people.
Castilian.
Yeah, Castilian.
That's from Spain, yeah. But then in Latin America, you've got Mexico. Basically, most of South America has Spanish recognized as one or the national language. And then you've got Mexico and Central America are almost all Spanish speaking, even though some of them have English as a second language, official second language. So, there's a big difference between Venezuela and Mexico in the way that they speak Spanish.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, again, that hreflang gives you the opportunity to specify
target
the language and the region.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you want to target people that are actually from South America, like Colombia or something like that, you can put that in as the type of Spanish that you are target. We did that with a mega church that was going after a lot of people in Brazil and things like that. So, I mean, or you can just make it /ES, or sorry, just ES and have the broad match. But the writing, if you do that, the writing is the most important part. I think Google's gotten better at detecting the accent or the regional, what region you're from, especially with languages like Spanish.
Well, I think the search engines are more forgiving if you're just general ES without any region.
Yeah,
I think they're more forgiving of the differences in grammar and conjugations that exist between some of the Latin American countries.
Very well said. Yeah,
and even so, even with writing for in Spanish, just plain Spanish, between Mexico and Spain, there's a lot of differences in it, in the way that your verbs are conjugated, in the way that your sentence structure goes, and Google, at least, is more forgiving of the differences. They'll show the same thing to both, whereas if you have the region, they'll only show it to the one, typically.
Yeah, well, that is true. I've seen a lot of people switch over, especially in the United States, go over to just the ES and use a regionless setup. Tends to make a lot of sense. And the writer could be somebody that is, just like you said, is either proficient. It depends on where they're from, or what their writing is like. I
We
tried
should
to
have that for simplified English for Americans.
Pig Latin.
Yeah, avoid double syllable words.
That's actually a pretty good idea, believe it or not, sadly.
Well, and that's what is Yoast has a tool built into their plugin that helps grade the difficulty of the content you're reading.
Yep.
Yeah,
and it's like I kind of hate that.
The Fleischmann-Kincaid reading scale.
Yeah, they use the API from Fleischmann-Kincaid.
I see that, and we'll put out a piece of content, and of course the client's running Yoast, and they go in the back end and go, oh, this has a big red dot because it says it's too hard to read. It's like, but it's a complex subject. It should be hard to read.
But it's not even that it's hard to read. It's that those systems think of subordinate clauses, which make total sense because they are explaining what comes before, right? They think of those as hard to read sentences. You're supposed to make 2 sentences out of it. So it's all choppy. That's one of my pet peeves with those things, is everything is hard to read because easy to read is subject, verb, object, and if you go beyond that, it's hard to read.
Some writers are used to writing very simple English, like Ernest Hemingway.
Yeah.
Great example, yeah.
I like sentences that have at least 8 commas, 4 parentheses, and at least maybe even a couple of quotes thrown in there.
2,000-word sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of my favorite writers during the British Renaissance was Thomas Carlyle, who'd averaged 17 words a sentence. And he used to use all these additional phrases that ran in parallel to each other that would have multiple parts.
Yeah.
I always wanted a most obscure word toggle in a thesaurus. So when I typed in a word, it gave me the most random word possible that still made sense. And I want to use that. It makes me sound
You want people looking it up.
I want to make people look this up.
Yep. My thesaurus is the smartest person in the room.
What I like with Grammarly, which I recommend to anyone who's, I'm a terrible speller, by the way. If you're writing, Grammarly is well worth it, and the free version is still even excellent. You can just highlight a word with that, and it will give you the thesaurus and the dictionary on it. Most of the time, the definition from Wikipedia, actually.
Grammarly has shown me just how many hyphens I leave out of words.
Yeah, me too.
I never knew that was supposed to be hyphenated.
It gives you a little email with like a pep talk at the end of the week. Tells you how great you did on. I can never get it to do anything negative. I had 2 accounts by accident, and I tried to get one of them doing everything wrong. It still told me I was great.
Positive reinforcement. Here's a
Motivational. Yeah.
Yeah, it just seemed like it's a good way to get people to.
This guy's not too bright. We better make him feel good about himself.
Exactly. Here's a pat on the back.
I get that a lot from family.
Well, guys, I hate to leave early. I just saw somebody come in the office, so I need to bolt for a bit. Have a wonderful week. Enjoy your Christmas.
Great to see you, Steve.
We'll talk
Take
to you
care, Steve.
later. Bye.
A good holiday.
So I have a question for everyone. Do you guys think putting the definitions of, if you were working on a website to do with nutrition, putting the definitions of certain ingredients would be beneficial?
Putting the definitions of what?
Of ingredients.
Of ingredients of what?
For like a
Are you writing
recipe?
a recipe?
Not a recipe, but of a product. I can say that, I guess. Imagine a product with ingredients in it.
Well, I would say, first of all, if there are any ingredients that are potentially hazardous to the average person or to somebody with a particular condition, absolutely.
Yep.
Some sites do that very well, like Target does it.
Do they?
I mean, you go through a product list from Target, and they'll tell you what everything's made out of.
Hmm,
I had no idea. That's cool.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, no idea. That's cool.
I didn't know that either.
And this guy's not too bright. We better make him feel good about himself.
Exactly.
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 Yeah,
And they
Target's,
do it more than just about anybody else.
yeah, Target's sort of the gold standard for, I think, for that type of thing. And that's probably all AI generated content, I imagine. Or it
So
could
why
be.
did you ask that question?
Oh, I just wanted people's opinions.
Oh, okay.
Zara, are you seeing more AI generated content or any AI machine learning or generated content in the writing world more?
Well, there's a push for both fiction and nonfiction. There are several AI AI producers, right? They're in competition with each other.
Mhm.
And I tested a couple. I tested a fiction one and it just came up with craziness because it's kind of, it's kind of based for fantasy writers, so it didn't work very well for me. And then the AI for at least I tested two, I think. The AI for business, as it were, online writing, I think I've mentioned it here before, is it came up with these sentences that were grammatically correct but meant nothing. It meant absolutely nothing. And if you string three of those sentences together to form a paragraph, you have a triply meaningless paragraph. So yeah. So here's what happens in both instances as far as I'm concerned. It's the same problem I have with dictation. Unless you find a really good dictation tool, you're going to spend more time editing this craziness than you would just writing prose that meets what the client needs. Why do I want to spend my time trying to figure out what this is saying and then editing it into something consumable and on target with a client's market when I can just write the same thing in a quarter of the time?
Yeah.
Do you agree, Doc?
Say again?
Do you agree?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll spend a good bit more time trying to fix something than just biting the bullet and writing it yourself.
Yep. Exactly. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. No, it did. It's very well said.
And then you have those situations where people are writing content that's just poorly written on purpose. And
Oh, yeah,
unfortunately, there are a lot of
because
U.S.
it's supposed
patents
to,
like that.
yeah, it's supposed to sound friendly and informal, I think is the idea.
Oh, or just people just put gibberish in there just to make it sound friendly until the AI tells them.
No, they just write poorly. And it's supposed to sound, like one of the guys or whatever, but it's,
Oh, I get it. Yeah. So just try to dumb it down to make it sound like two people having a conversation that are.
well, they take the, right as though, you're having a face-to-face conversation with someone, which is natural language, right?
Mhm.
But don't screw it up by, writing poor English and then hoping that people are going to understand.
That makes a
And,
lot of sense.
I mean, it's the same thing with writing fiction. I just wrote an article about this a couple of weeks ago in fiction writing where, you're supposed to introduce your main character and show them in their normal world. But golly gee whiz, you need a story, So I read a novel by a, famous author woman. This was a spy thriller, and it took to the third chapter before we got to the story, because first we got the guy in his ordinary world, including how many stripes were on his shirt and how many buttons he had on his shirt. And I'm like, where is the effing story? So it's the same thing, you know. And the whole thing about storytelling, which isn't quite as bad as it was a couple of years ago, but you know, it's like I was riding the Blue Trip special on the steps of Russia and blah blah blah, and there's this whole long story about their train ride. And then after you finish that, you get to how this applies to my product or service,
But
right?
then again,
Oh,
there's a well-known bestseller about a person's biography, and he's not born until page 90. So some authors just milk that for all it's worth.
Yeah, well, then there's Tristram Shandy, where we never get past the first
Right.
5 minutes. That's
That's the one
that was
exactly.
just total fun, you know. He was playing with everybody.
does
So,
anyone
but you have
give a
to have an
copy?
audience intelligent enough to understand you're playing with them, and that doesn't always work in web content.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and, you know, if you're playing with words, it's best to write simple, direct sentences. And if you know, Steve is gone, but I agree, you know, with Steve that you don't have to make every sentence subject, object, verb because it might be too long for people to understand. Come on, human beings are able to understand basic concepts,
Yep,
including a subordinate clause here and there. Is my feeling.
I agree with you. That makes sense.
I actually had a client one time that looked at that Fleischman Kincaid reading and said it was written to I think it was 6th to 7th grade level. And he says, these are adult clothes. There's no 6th or 7th graders that are going to buy this shit. And he was serious.
And
I had to explain to him. I said, no, it's the reading level. I said, you got to understand that the average college freshman has a 6th or 7th grade reading level.
yeah,
And you put something like The Sun Also Rises through that, and it gets a 3rd to 4th grade reading level.
Yeah.
And the guy wrote bestsellers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what would you say the reading level of Hemingway is? Probably like
3rd grade to
5th or
4th
Yeah.
grade.
Is
yeah.
it?
it's yeah, it definitely. I mean, the Hemingway app is a great application to make content just a little bit easier for people to understand, I guess. But
Well, you know, there's people who this was a while ago now, but you know, send an email with misspellings or well, they break up sentences, but that's pretty common in emails. And then they say, you know, I made these mistakes on purpose so you would notice them. So you will notice everything that I'm saying in this email that I'm trying to sell you, fill in the blank. And I'm like, that doesn't work with me. Maybe that works with other people, but it doesn't work with me. So poor language doesn't sell me anything.
yeah, I agree
So
with that.
back to your guy who has those intentional quote dumbed down statement. You
Mhm.
have to be really careful with that. And I think the easiest way to do that is to use perhaps colloquialisms
Mhm.
or that your audience would use, but to still write in correct grammar, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. It's great advice.
We've gotten to the top of the hour. Sadly, we're going to have to call it a show. Thank you for
A
joining us.
show.
Appreciate it. Bye now. Have fun.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.
Merry Christmas to everybody.
Merry
Yeah, have a
Christmas.
good
Merry Christmas.
holiday.
Happy holidays.